What's up, Guardians? Haterade here, and today we revisit one of the most powerful setups for the Titan, the Behemoth. Over the course of the last year, we've seen some insane builds focused around this subclass, and the Witch Queen is looking to provide just the tool needed to crank this subclass up to new heights with one of the Titan's brand new exotics, the Hoarfrost-Z. The long and short of this exotic is that it converts your Titan barricade into a wall of ice, offering several benefits that drastically outweigh a normal Titan barricade, but we'll get into more of that later. Now, clearly Void 3.0 has seen the Sentinel Titan establish a commanding presence in many fire teams and solo gameplay, but once you get to taste this build, you're going to be freezing and shattering everything in front of you with no looking back. The foundation for many stasis builds, and this one is no exception, centers around being able to freeze and shatter enemies to reduce ability cooldown while also allowing the user to do increased damage with stasis weapons. In the previous seasons, we were extremely limited on weapons with a stasis elemental affinity, but all that changed with the launch of Witch Queen. Now there are over a dozen choices of elemental weapons to utilize with a build such as this. As I go over both the subclass and abilities, you'll hear me reference the creation of stasis crystals through the use of both abilities and these new stasis weapons. The primary focus of this build is to cover the landscape in front of you with stasis crystals, which will not only aid you by freezing your enemies, but will also provide both an incoming damage reduction and increased weapon damage. We'll cover some of those options later on in the video. For now, let's start from the ground up with the subclass setup itself. The Behemoth is the Titan's stasis subclass, which boasts only a single selection for super abilities, Glacial Quake. The super can be used both offensively and defensively, in this case, creating waves of stasis crystals around you. For aspects, we'll be focused on Diamond Lance and Tectonic Harvest. Diamond Lance gives you 3 fragment slots and allows you to create a stasis lance when shattering or defeating enemies with stasis damage, to include stasis weapons. Yes, that's right. You can simply destroy an enemy with a stasis weapon and boom, you've got yourself a stasis lance that you can either yeet at something in front of you or slam into the ground for a small AoE attack. With Tectonic Harvest and its 2 fragment slots, shattering stasis crystals will create stasis shards, which will be key for keeping this build up and running. Tie that together with the Glacial Grenade and you are all set. The 5 fragments slotted with this build all work in synergy with some of the mods we'll discuss here shortly. Whisper of Rending allows your kinetic weapons to do increased damage to both stasis crystals and frozen enemies. Whisper of Fissures increases the size and damage of the area of effect from shattering a stasis crystal or frozen target. Whisper of Shards states that shattering a stasis crystal temporarily boosts grenade recharge rate. Shattering additional stasis crystals increases the duration of this benefit. Whisper of Conduction allows for stasis shards created from shattering crystals to track to your location. And last, and arguably one of the best fragments for this build, Whisper of Chains, which states that standing near frozen targets or friendly stasis crystals, you take reduced damage. You can see here where I take 70 damage from a hand cannon shot to the head without the resist, and upon throwing my grenade and standing near the crystal, that same hand cannon only hits for 53 damage. This is applicable in both PvE and PvP, but for today we'll focus on PvE only. The focal point of this build isn't the subclass setup itself, rather the new exotic Titan chest armor, Hoarfrost-Z. Obtained from either completing the legendary campaign or from random drops after completing a legend or master lost sector, the Hoarfrost-Z is exactly what the Behemoth Titan was missing. The exotic perk Glacial Fortification states that when using the stasis subclass, your barricade becomes a wall of stasis crystals that slows nearby targets when created. Standing behind this barricade will grant you and your allies increased weapon reload speed, stability, and range. This thing is absolutely insane. Dropping your new stasis barricade offers you the benefits of both the normal towering and rally barricades, while tying in the ability to play into stasis mods and abilities. If this isn't an exotic fitting perfectly well into a playstyle of ability spam and aggressive pushes, then I don't know what is. On top of that, you can use both your Glacial Fortification and your Glacial Grenade to cordon off yourself from rushing attackers, freezing them at the same time. Once they get even remotely close, you destroy some or all of those stasis crystals to both deal damage and proc your decreased cooldown time on your abilities. Now, there's definitely a method to the madness to juggling your ability cooldowns. The best recommendation I can give is to use your Glacial Grenades for anything mid to far range that you want to freeze, and then use your Glacial Fortification for anything that gets too close for comfort. Now, the subclass setup and exotic armor piece are only a portion of this build. Next up, we focus on the mods that take this build to the next level. It's important to note that a lot of the armor mods for this build are found only on armor with a stasis elemental affinity, so that's something to keep in mind. First up, we have the Elemental Shards mod, which allows for stasis shards, you know, the ones you create whenever you shatter something, to count as a stasis well. What that essentially equates to is an endless supply of stasis wells that will allow you to take advantage of our next mod, Font of Might. Font of Might will proc after picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy, giving you a short period of a 25% damage buff with stasis weapons. Remember that increased weapon pool of stasis weapons we talked about earlier? Yeah, now's the time to reach in there and pull a few out. Something like the new Stasis SMG, the Forensic Nightmare, or Pulse Rifle Syncopation 53 are fantastic options. Not only that, but a lot of these weapons can roll with Headstone, giving you even another chance at creating stasis crystals and shards, and providing you with damage resistance when nearby. Remember all those stasis shards turn stasis wells? Well, guess what? By utilizing elemental charge in conjunction with high energy fire, you're going to have an additional 20% damage buff up almost the entire time you use this build. Because Font of Might is seen as an amplification modifier and not an empowering buff, they can be combined to push your damage to new heights. The last piece of the puzzle for the mod breakdown is the arc mod, Striking Light. The focus on using this mod is for its secondary perk, allowing you to gain a 25% damage resistance against combatants while sprinting. This gives you the coverage you may need to sprint from one stasis crystal to another, ensuring you won't go down to enemy fire. At the end of the day, this is going to be a fantastic tool for any behemoth to have in their kit. Me personally, I ran this exact build in portions of the day one contest mode of the new raid Vow of the Disciple, and still use it on normal runs, and have used it to flawlessly clear several Legend and Master Lost sectors solo. But arguably the most important of all, it's just a fun and powerful build that showcases both subclass mastery and build crafting at the highest level. With that, we're at the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed this build breakdown and learned something from it. As always, I'll have the link to the dim loadout in the description if you want to take a look at everything and set the build up for yourself. If you enjoyed this video or found it at all helpful, then a like is greatly appreciated. Subscribe for more Destiny 2 content, and feel free to check out this build and many more live over on Twitch at twitch.tv/haterid. I stream Destiny 2 3 to 4 days a week and would love to have you swing by and check out the channel. That's it. I'm done. I'm out. I'll see y'all in the next one.